I can't go because we will be on vacation all next week. So
How dare you?
I know. I love Sierra Cider though. So if I was
Me
here,
too.
I'd be there.
And I've found that a lot of people aren't aware too much of that venue. And so that's a whole other thing. So just getting people out there and local community stuff. So big fan.
Mhm. Welcome to episode number 40 of Now Making Moves in Real Estate. Today, I'm super excited to have Richard Blalock, an executive technology leader in the federal public sector with over 20 years of IT experience. From his start as a help desk technician to becoming a respected executive, Richard has a wealth of stories and insights that equip, empower, and elevate others. Richard's new book, It's Not the Tech, Leadership Lessons from the IT Field, which Courtney and I are staunch leadership readers, but this is going to be an interesting perspective because it's an industry and a field that we're not super savvy with. It's officially out in paperback and ebook. His book dives deep into the real challenges facing organizations, issues that go far beyond technology. It's perfect for seasoned leaders, aspiring managers, or anyone curious about what truly drives success in IT. Outside of work, Richard enjoys life here locally, here in Mariposa. He's our first local guest on the podcast with his wife, his two children, and their two Australian shepherds. So join me as Richard shares leadership lessons, insights from his career, and practical strategies for fostering innovation and collaborations. Welcome, Mr. Richard.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me, Michelle. I'm grateful to have the chance to talk about leadership and my book and some great lessons, as well as I'm honored to be the first local in the podcast, if you will. So thank you for having me, and I'm excited to dive in with you today.
Yeah, let's do it. So I have known of you for over a decade because I've been here that long.
Yes,
And I know you started off like from the bottom all the way up, working your way up. So tell our listeners just a little bit about your journey into the field and, like, more importantly, an executive role
right.
in leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in the IT field for about 20 years now, starting out in a computer lab, helping students at my local community college. When I lived up in Northern California, I worked at a PC repair shop. You know, they don't exist as often as they used to anymore, but doing those, like, you bring it in, I got a virus or I need to fix a part. I did that as well for a long time. And then over time, I've grown. I've worked in a lot of different fields, both professionally in terms of my main job or career, but also on the side through, my a business I've done where I've done consulting or repair type work over the years. So I've worked in healthcare, small businesses. I've even helped out a couple of real estate companies over the years with some IT needs, this and that. And then finally transitioning into where I currently work in the public sector. Over the years now, I've gotten into an executive leadership role. I currently work there full time. But I also am really passionate about technology. I'm passionate about leadership. That's what kind of prompted me to write this book. So I currently lead a large number of teams across the Western U.S. and I'm all about doing what we can to make efficient use of tax dollars in my role. So that's where I am now today.
Okay, so how many people are you leading right now?
So I currently have a team of about 14 staff. But I also provide, those are my direct reports that I work with regularly, but I also oversee, if you will, about 37 different teams across the Western United States. There's probably about 225 IT staff that I work and collaborate and support as the leader for that region.
Wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah. It's hard to remember everyone's names, but I definitely try.
And you're working for the federal public sector. So what is
Yeah,
that?
I was trying to be generic, but I work for the U.S. courts is where I work. Mhm. So in the
Okay.
judiciary side of things.
Okay. So what inspired you to do the book?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So, over my career, I've run into and encountered a lot of really interesting, I call them, scenarios and situations. Some of them might be kind of humorous, but others are downright inappropriate. And a lot of those situations I capture in the book. If you grab a copy, you'll notice that every chapter kind of opens with a real story of something that I've experienced. I've, of course, to respect the privacy of everyone in the organizations, I've anonymized or I've changed the names or the the business types or things like that, just to try to be respectful, non-substantively. So I've had these really interesting situations that I've encountered that over time I've really seen point to what I see to be a really root cause or problem, and what I think to be is lacking is leadership and leadership in the technology field. I always talk about, I like to tell a story of a situation I ran into about a decade ago where I really started thinking about writing. I was taking over support for a company. I worked for a company that did IT support. And this company was signed a contract to do the IT support for a small business. And that small business had a guy, an IT guy, if you will, that had been there forever. I don't really know for how long. But so my first assignment, I was kind of new to this area. It was like my first real serious big boy IT job. My assignment was to meet with this outgoing leader and really learn about what the work was needed, the requirements and the priorities, and help get them up and running. And, it was such an interesting, it was kind of mind boggling because I go to meet with them and I go into the business office and they're like, oh yeah, he's out back. I'm like, what do you mean he's out back? And they point me out and there's this old rickety camper trailer out there, like really old busted down camper trailer. Like, oh, he's in there. And so all right, I go knock on the door and he invites me in, and I don't want to be disrespectful, but the reality is that this man was like this. When you think IT, if you're not an IT person, a lot of people have that stereotypical idea of like that guy in his mom's basement, kind of Cheeto dust and video games and kind of sloppy areas. Like people have that perspective. And I believe that some stereotypes exist for a good reason. And this poor man did nothing to help push against that stereotype. He really filled that up. And he was this just super socially awkward man. But then when it came also to the technical side of things, he tried to go into this really elaborate detail and talk to me using all of these really detailed terminologies and phrases. And it was actually quite overwhelming. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this job. Like I was actually really nervous that I couldn't. So then afterward, I go meet with the boss of the company, the CEO, if you will, of the organization. And he was like explaining how the first thing he tells me is he says, I have no idea how my IT guy spends his time. We don't know where he is half the time. He always goes in these big, long descriptions. I'm not a tech person, so I really don't know what to say. And he just proceeds to tell me 30 minutes of all these headaches that he's having with his IT. Come to find out over time, in this situation, it wasn't this really overly detailed environment, but that person himself was really complicating things. He wasn't communicating effectively. He wasn't partnering with the organization. And so that really kind of started getting my gears turning to be like, there's something missing here. There's a gap here when it comes to IT leadership. There's a billion different books out there on leadership. Sure. And like you mentioned before, like you love them, I love them. I read a leadership book typically every month. I'd have plenty that I'd be happy to recommend to you offline if you'd like. But they really often struggle to hit home with the technology area or the IT crowd. We know that IT is really rapidly evolving, just like the real estate market, I'm sure, is rapidly evolving. But we know that it's not necessarily the technology itself. It's really how we use it to support the organization that we're in charge of, whether it's real estate or otherwise. And so, and the other side, like I said, you see these senior leadership, these CEOs or organizational heads that are overseeing these different areas. They're real estate professionals. They're maybe not necessarily as tech savvy. You could run the gamut across from one group to another. But sometimes they might feel incapable of understanding what it is their IT people do, if they have dedicated staff, or if they contract out to do something, or if their son's friend is just good with computers and keeps things going. They really don't understand that, and they feel incapable of really properly using technology. And ultimately, that could lead to an unhealthy professional relationship where if you do have a person, they might be taking advantage of that lack of understanding. If the person they're reporting to isn't technical, they might use just crazy terms or whatever, like this gentleman in the trailer was, or just otherwise just be an inappropriate or ineffective, let's say, relationship when it comes to leadership. So that was really why I ultimately decided to write this book, because I think that leaders, both in the IT field or otherwise, they really need to, in the IT field especially, I think there's universal truths in leadership that apply into the IT field that we're not necessarily hitting home. And so the point of that book was really try to bridge that gap between IT folks and non-IT folks so that companies can really maximize the value of how they're using technology and how they're being leaders for their organization, especially.
So I hear you saying that you've obviously identified a need for a specific way of leading people in the IT industry that you didn't see currently existed. And so what would you say in the book that you wrote are like the top things or skills or tactics, or I'm not sure what verbiage you prefer to use, but that you write about that you've used that are effective in leading those people that you have right today?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. I really think it's important to break down that mind block, that roadblock that some leaders might have when it's like, oh, I'm not a tech person, I really don't understand it, whatever. And I think we really should break that down. And that's why my book is called It's Not the Tech, because our issues, even in the technology field, are not technology focused. They're really breaking down to two primary areas, which I'm sure we've all heard about: people problems and process problems. And so when we look at specifically those, when we break that down and we understand that the technology really exists to empower our organizations, to empower us as leaders or real estate agents or business owners to do the work that we need to do, then when we understand that technology exists, whatever it is that we need to support it, I would argue that for the most part, there's a technology tool or product or widget or gizmo or software or whatever that can do the work. It really comes down to how we use it. And so my main points in the book drive down into people problems and process problems. If you really start breaking down your technology failures or shortcomings, or your leadership failures and shortcomings, if you really look at them from a people problem or a process problem, that's really when you can start making inroads for meaningful growth and change. And so my book is kind of divided into three. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, can you give me an example of a problem and how you break it down?
Yeah, absolutely. So I worked with a client that they bought some software. And in the book, I talk about this in the example that I used. There was a summer camp that wanted to buy camp management software. Those things exist. So they manage the campers and the registrations and the who paid and what group they're coming from and do they have medical needs or whatever. There's software out there that does that. And they picked a product that they wanted to do, and they invested a lot of their money. This was a nonprofit. They invested their money to commit to this product. Well, about halfway into the implementation, they learned that, long story short, a critical thing that they needed the program to do didn't exist in this particular product that they bought. And so my argument is that really a technology problem? Or how did we come to the decision to decide that product? Did we vet our needs effectively? Did we talk to the right people? Are we trained, to use and understand what it is that we need? The ending story of that actually is a positive note in that it turns out, and this is also a people problem or a process problem, depending on how you look at it, that the software ultimately could do what it needed. And the guy that was assigned from the vendor to do the installation for us wasn't trained and didn't know what he was doing. And so in that example, it's not the technology. There's technology that can exist to support the campers or to manage your real estate portfolio and all the things that you need to do. There's great technology out there that exists, but if you're not familiar with how to use it and you don't set up your organizational processes to support the use of it, it's useless, right? Everyone's talking about AI right now. I went to this conference. I was in Florida last week. Huge technology conference. 10,000 people were there. The focus was all about AI use cases, AI security issues, AI best practices, companies that can use AI. I'm sure the real estate field is being hammered with this in advertising. We have an AI-driven thing that can help with market descriptions or valuations or best success or all of these other things. I'm sure people are getting hit with that as well. But that is just a technology tool. If you're not trained in how to effectively use it, if your processes aren't in place to do that, to be effectively using it and having the technology to support it, it's useless. It's completely a useless tool for you. So the argument is that when we really start breaking down our problems and getting below the surface technology and down into those people and process challenges and start tackling those, the technology kind of ends up falling into place more organically or naturally.
Well, everything you just said, I'm like, I can think of a number of examples. I'm like, oh, there's this software we have, nobody's using it. And sometimes it's not necessarily a reflection of the software or the process. It's just like we have so many tools at our disposal that it's like, it's overwhelming. Like it can be overwhelming to be like, well, I'm using this for this thing and this for this thing and this for this thing and this for this thing. And then at the end of the day, I'm just trying to do my job, especially for a real estate agent. We
a day-to-day job.
We have so many things that we use as real estate agents out there. So many platforms, tracking systems, CRMs, financial software. I mean, it's crazy. It's overwhelming. So I understand what you're talking about and going like, wait a minute, it's not the software's fault. It's like maybe the process or the people. So yeah.
Right. And so I talk a lot about, in the book, we dive into kind of a couple of different sections. The first, we talk about some critical leadership skills. I really don't feel the need to necessarily reinvent the wheel when it comes to leadership. Right. There's a million leadership books out there. I even say that in the book. I'm like, there's a million out there. Here's some that I like if you want to read them. But we talk about 3 areas that especially are applicable in the technology field and how we're using technology. And the first deals with communication, because again, I think how your IT, how you're working with your tech people is really important, and being able to communicate effectively across organizations about what you're using, whether you're a person, if I'm your IT person, Michelle, and you, let's say hypothetically, you're not as tech savvy, and I'm throwing out all of these tech terms about mainframes, databases, and yada yadas, and AIs and algorithms, and you're like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. That's a failure on my part. That's not a technical failure. That's my failure to communicate effectively. So we talk about some strategies to break into that, both from the IT side of things and then the non-IT side of things. We talk about delegation. That's a unique challenge in the technology field and in all fields, but I would argue it's also especially in tech, in which a lot of people, typically IT managers, get into that role. They work their way up, just like we talked about in the beginning. I worked my way up. I was in a repair shop fixing stuff. My daughter knows more about how to fix things than I do these days. She knows how to fix my iPhone better than I do. I'm rusty in that area. And that's a natural evolution of my role. And that's how it should work with the rapidly changing field of technology, is that we have to be able to delegate down. And so it's not about me knowing the most about everything in whatever leadership role that I'm in. It's really about finding the best people that can do the best work in those areas, that are the best in that certain area, and delegating those roles to them. And the last one is strategy. You just talked about a million different programs and CRMs and all these solutions, and are we using them effectively or not? That's also important. And that's not a technology problem. That's a leadership fundamental skill. Whereas leaders, you have to sit down and know what direction do we want to take our organization? Why do we want to get there? Or do we need to pivot and go to a different direction, and why? And then once you know that, then you work with your technology people, or you're the technology person if you're a smaller group or whatever, to then find and apply the right technology that supports you going in the direction that you want to go. So rather than being reactive and just fixing and, oh, here's this new thing, you're cool-headed, you're cool, calm, and collected because you know where your organization's going, and then you can find the right technology to place on top of that to support it.
Though it's all, I like cringed. For if anybody watches this on YouTube, you'll see me when he hit like number 2 on delegation. I'm like, it's just so hard. It's so hard. Like, what's your like biggest tip on trying to be like that delegator?
That's one of the biggest challenges that I face. I do consulting, and I visit a lot of organizations and come in to try to help look at their IT department's efficiencies. And so many leaders are, I've been in places where there's an IT director that has 14 or 15 staff that are supposed to be doing things that the IT director is spending their time doing. So there's issues where there's a trust issue. Maybe you want it done a certain way and they might not do it a certain way or communicate it the exact way you want it. And so there's a little bit, you have to choose what you're going to let go of or what you're going to try to instill. There's that trust issues. There's imposter syndrome is huge in the technology leadership field, right? Well, I need to know the most out of all my teams, and that's not true at all. So we look at that type of imposter syndrome, and then it's just really maximizing value. If we're just constantly putting out fires and busy doing busy work, which we have to do, then that leadership person cannot step back, cannot get out of the day-to-day grind. Because sometimes they got to be in the day. They got to be able to roll their sleeves up and jump in and support the team. But a leader should be able to delegate effectively. And there's somebody I like, his name's Jocko Willink. He's a Navy SEAL. He wrote a great leadership book, and he talks about, you say execute in the military terms, which I'm not a veteran or anything like that, but you say execute and everything's just getting done. And you're able to step back and analyze, in his analogy, the battlefield, but in the work realm, where we're going, are we headed in the right direction? It allows you to step out and be more proactive and really maximize that value for your organization to stay a step ahead.
We love Jocko. Jocko's great.
I love Jocko.
Yeah, Jocko. I mean, he's one of those that we saw at an event speak one time and talk about somebody that just, really recognize like, okay, I got to let my people do what they need to do. And what did he say? If not, it's not his quote, but it's if not us, then who? Or if not me, then who?
Right. It's his mentality behind extreme ownership, and as leaders, we take responsibility for the success or failure of the areas in which we're in charge of. And you really can't see the upcoming problem if you're in the trenches too busy, doing things. I use an analogy in my book of a ship captain, let's say, right? Maybe he started off in his role as a cook peeling potatoes or whatever, and that's great. There's nothing wrong with that, but he's worked his way up. Can he be out there and seeing, are we going? Is our staffing okay with the ship? If he's back in the kitchen peeling potatoes, he can't. And so he has to be able, he or she, they have to be able to step into their leadership role and own that. And that involves maybe giving up something. Maybe it's not exactly how I'd prefer to communicate it or my way or whatever, how I'd go about it exactly. But as long as your missions or objectives are being completed, then you might have to pick and choose what battles you're gonna tackle there. It's one of the most difficult things. So big.
That was my second cringe moment of letting go and picking battles. It's like, that's my nickname. It's huge. It's like, I feel like I'm the one that has a difficult time delegating because I like to control. And I'm afraid of like, will it turn out good? You know what I mean? Or as
well, and even as leaders, we have to step into, we should be empathetic and almost try to put ourselves into our team members' shoes. I've been in roles where I've been assigned a project where I spent weeks or even months working on that project and going way down the road in a certain direction. And to be fair, I was also communicating in written like weekly reports or biweekly updates to my leadership where I was going and what I was doing. And about 3 months into it, my boss came in and had a completely different idea that we should be going in this other direction. And all of that work was wasted. And so That goes back into a communication challenge and a people leadership challenge, in which, as leaders, if you're too busy over here and you're not able to support your teams. So I have a whole section in the book that talks about the people problem, where we dive into how to build really great, healthy teams in your organization, and then how to keep them as well. I do talk a little bit about the IT side of things, and I personally am a fan for the appropriate roles of telecommuting and remote work. I have a very distributed team, and you know, I don't want to get too deep into that topic, but those are some of the things that we talk about building and then supporting the teams and building that healthy culture. And in my example, in a healthier culture, my leadership would have been able to take that step back and understand how to best support their teams to accomplish the goal. That's the difference, right? Because I'm out here accomplishing the goal. If my boss wanted me to go right instead of left, I didn't know that. And I spent all this time going in one direction only for all that work to be wasted. And so really effective leadership comes down to not the sales goals, not the quarterly profits, none of that. It's really, I believe that successful leadership is really when your team members are feeling supported and empowered and enabled to do the work that they need to do, which ultimately gets you the quarterly goals and the sales goals and the whatever figures. But so many often we get focused on the day-to-day and trying to achieve it, and we're hostile or toxic to our team members or unhealthy communication, and they're telling us what they're doing and we're not listening, and then it's not the way we wanted to go. We didn't listen enough to pivot them or whatever. And that's not a healthy work goal. And so I focus really heavily in the book on building and maintaining healthy and effective teams, which is a universal leadership principle. It's not an IT leadership principle, but it's universal for all.
Which we do have a lot of real estate agents out there that are on teams. We have a lot of real estate agents that are team leaders. We have a lot of brokers that are responsible for organizations. So our audience could certainly benefit from your book and your suggestions. So before we wrap up, a couple things. Let our audience members know where they can find your book.
Great. Yeah, so it's for sale currently. It's out now on Amazon. If you search my name, Richard Blalock, Blalock is that last name on Amazon. You can find that. It's in paperback and e-reader formats. You can also go to richard-blalock.com, which has links to the book. It has links where you can book me. I love speaking. I love speaking at events. I speak at events all over the country. And so I'd be happy to come talk to your organization about healthy leadership cultures and empowering your teams and building all of those things out. You can book me anytime, and I'd love to hear from you, and we could talk about what you're looking for and how we can help out with that.
Awesome. Well, I am very, very, very excited for you. I've been able to watch your journey and your wife's journey and your kids, obviously,
Yes, of course,
as well. But I think it's really cool to meet people that start from the bottom and work their way up. And you are certainly one of those people that have gone to school, done the work, put in the hours, and you deserve all the success in the world. So congratulations. I'm super happy for you and your family. And the other thing that I wanted to mention before we leave is I hear you're going to have like a book celebration party. When is that happening? If our local and other people want to come?
Absolutely. So if you're listening to this or watching this and you're local, or even if you're not local and you want to come up to the Mariposa, the Yosemite area is beautiful this time of year. We are holding a book launch party that'll be next Friday, November the 8th. That's going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. at Sierra Cider. If you haven't been to Sierra Cider, it's a gorgeous venue. They sell some great cider. And we're going to have some local food vendors and some desserts from local vendors as well. So it's a great opportunity to see the book. We'll have a handful of copies for sale in person, but it's a great opportunity to come up and celebrate. Nice. So I'm happy to sign them. My wife bought me this beautiful pen I can use, ready to go. So happy to sign copies anytime, but especially at that party. So if people are in the area, we'd love to have you there.
Perfect. Yeah, we're big fans of Sierra Cider, David and Dana. We showed them on our American Dream TV episode. Was that last month? I think it was last month. So
Yeah.
yeah, we
Yeah, they're
love that.
fantastic.
Great venue. So all right, Richard. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I can't wait to see what's next for you.
I really appreciate you having me on, and thank you so much. And I look forward to maybe coming back soon and talking again. Thank you again.
Okay, perfect.